Welcome to this session on land acknowledgements in libraries, a micro-learning session sponsored by ALA and LearnRT. Let's start off by looking at this quote by Mary Lyons from the Leech Lake Band of Ojibwe. When we talk about the land is part of who we are. It's a mixture of our blood, our past, our current, and our future. We carry our ancestors in us, and they're all around us, as you all do. As we learn today together and think about land acknowledgements and how we fit into giving land acknowledgements, keep this quote in mind as we work through this together. So these are our learning objectives for this video. The first is to understand why we do land acknowledgements. The second is to understand where and when it is appropriate to do land acknowledgements. And the third is to have a basic understanding on how to give a land acknowledgement. So let's start out with an introduction. What exactly is a land acknowledgement? Acknowledging Indigenous lands, rights, and peoples is a practice to inform where libraries are situated, as well as where librarians and staff members are situated. It's a starting point to understand the long presence and histories of Indigenous peoples, as well as our historical, social, and physical locations. As well, land acknowledgements allow us to understand the complex histories of the lands that we are on. So why are land acknowledgements important? Land acknowledgements are a step towards building a better understanding and relations with Indigenous peoples and communities. It's also an opportunity to make meaningful connections to the land. Acknowledging traditional, ancestral, and unceded lands in a way is to invite guests, particularly those who are not Indigenous, to listen and acknowledge their positions on this territory, and to understand that as guests, they benefit from being situated on unceded lands and the resources that those lands have to offer. So when exactly is it appropriate to give a land acknowledgement? Land acknowledgements usually happen when we host events or at the beginning of a talk or conference. In some cases, they can be found in email signatures or on institutional websites. So next, let's look at how we create land acknowledgements. So first, we have to start with a self-reflection. When we start with our self-reflection on how to create a land acknowledgement, we can ask ourselves the questions, why am I doing this land acknowledgement? What is my end goal? Or where will my land acknowledgement have the largest impact? Next, we need to do our homework. So we need to find out who are the Indigenous peoples whom the land belongs to. What is the history of the land? And are there any related treaties or agreements? Who are some of the prominent Indigenous people working in your field? What are the Indigenous place names and languages from the area? As well as what are the correct pronunciations for the names of communities, places, and individuals? So here's some homework help. These are two websites in which you can use for looking at how to do land acknowledgements or who the communities are that are on that land. The first website is Whose Land. The second website is Native Land. This is the Whose Land website. In this website, we can find information and explore territories by city, territories by land, territories by agreement, different Indigenous communities, and residential schools. Here's an example for the search that I did for the city that I live in, what is now known as Vancouver. Here's my search for Vancouver. In this, I can see the land acknowledgement for the city of Vancouver, the closest communities, as well as any additional communities or treaties that might be near the area that I'm from. This is the Native Land website. Let's explore. The Native Land website and Native Land Digital have quite an extensive map. I can scroll in to see the communities that are closest to where I am. I can click on this and see the different groups as well as languages that are spoken in that area. Next, we need to think about terminology. So when we're thinking about terminology, we want to use appropriate language. We want to look at style guides such as Indigenous Elements of Style written by Gregory Younging. This can help us when creating land acknowledgements to think about how we're using language as a tool within the acknowledgement. Next, let's look at some additional considerations. Communities whose lands you are on often give a welcome and not a land acknowledgement. Land acknowledgements don't necessarily have a specific formula that they follow. Additionally, it's important to provide honorariums to Indigenous people for their emotional labor and time. As well as it's important to understand displacement and how that plays into land acknowledgements. Here's an example of a land acknowledgement that I've created. Hello everyone, my name is Kayla Larson. I've been the narrator for this toolkit as well as the developer for it. I'm joining you today from what is now known as the city of Vancouver. I'm Métis on my mom's side and Ukrainian settler on my dad's side. I thought I would just end off this toolkit by letting you hear how I give a land acknowledgement personally, being here in Vancouver. So let's get started. I would like to begin by acknowledging that the lands that I am joining you from today, as an uninvited guest, are the unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. I would also like to acknowledge all the communities that you're joining from and all the lands that you are on and all those communities who have been there since time immemorial. Thank you for joining me today. Hi, hi. Thank you for being here with me today. It's important to recognize that we are all on this journey of learning about land acknowledgements together and that we are all in different stages of our knowing. It's okay to be uncomfortable when learning something new. Within the website, you'll find additional resources to help you learn more about land acknowledgements and further your understanding on why they're important and how we can work reciprocally with Indigenous communities and start building responsible relations with one another. Hi, hi. Thank you again.